This week on the 77% Street Debate.
For me, my silence is my voice, to be honest.
But Mandela isn't here. I mean, he's gone, long gone.
How many of you voted in the last election? Just raise your hands. Just one person. How many of you did not vote? Wow.
I feel like a failure as a leader because remember, as a young person, these are exactly the same people to which we should be targeting our message.
25 years ago, South Africa went to the polls for their first democratic elections, and there was euphoria felt across the continent and beyond. A quarter of a century later, though, that enthusiasm for civic duty seems to have fizzled. Young people are either not registering or showing up to the polls, and we want to find out why. And I have a really cool group of people to help me answer that question, and we'll begin with Divine. He actually lives in this area, and you say that voting, not for you.
No, not for me, because basically ever since 1994 up until now, we've been promised a lot of things, and it's so useless that we've been pointing fingers at every party, saying that we want this, we want that, but unfortunately nothing has been developed. We need infrastructures, and basically the main reason why I've lost the need to vote is because the Bill of Rights says we are equal, we are fair, but unfortunately we're not fair. We're not equal.
If you don't vote, how are these things that you want done going to change? The infrastructure you're talking about.
There's a lot of people that have been voting, and they've been voting for what? For a change that has not been delivered. So, I mean, it's basically, we've lost interest because what we've been wanting, we've been asking ever since our grandfathers and mothers, I mean, it's not been delivered.
Okay, so let me go to another person who says that voting is not really her cup of tea. Kitumetsi, why is it that going to the polls, to the ballots, is something you're not interested in?
To be honest and quite frankly, I just feel like black women and black queer bodies, and I feel like politics are in itself, South African politics, if not politics around the world, are not intersectional, and they're not considered of women politics and politics of existence. And I cannot say that I'm not interested in politics because my existence, you know, the personal is political. So then how can I not say I'm not interested in politics, because politics affect me in a huge way.
Okay.
So
Precious has a sort of similar view, saying that you are voting, but not voting for someone, but rather against. Explain this to me.
So I think you have to, these past elections, I had to think strategically, right? So I live in the Western Cape. So I voted against the kind of ruling party, but I wasn't really convinced of a particular party. But I voted for a party because I wanted the current party out, right? And nationally I did the same thing because I think that there needs to be a multiplicity of kind of voices in Parliament. But in terms of who I'm really convinced of, there hasn't been anyone really.
There hasn't been anyone?
No, absolutely not. That I think is convincing, right?
Okay, so let me come to Sihle, who is actually representing the EFF, which is an opposition party here, quite young. How does it make you feel when you hear people here say, the parties are not representative of me, they're only thinking about themselves, they're not doing it?
Look, certainly the concerns that are being raised by many young people, including the ones that are here in the panels, are genuine concerns. It's an odd 20 years after, the democratic dispensation, and throughout there's nothing to show, at least at a structural level, particularly when it comes to the question of young people. Young people have felt for the longest time that they were not part of the conversation because, small things like the old people that are in governance, the gatekeeping that happens due to a particular organization that refuses, to accept young voices, to accept young people to be part of policy, to be part of governance, to be part of many governmental structures. But for me, I don't think it's enough for young people to simply stand back and not vote. But perhaps we'll touch on that a bit later on. But I do agree that young people have a right to say we have not been included, we have not been part of the conversation. And they have a right to be concerned, they have a right to be disillusioned and also to be discouraged.
Okay, and now we come to Nqabayomzi. I really hope I said that right. If I'm not, I'm quite sorry. But you're saying that your party is offering something fresh, the UDM, that this is a no-corrupt party, this is a party of the future. Do you think the people here listening to you believe that?
Perhaps I think the mistake we made was that we did not package or communicate that message in a manner that resonates. with young people in particular, but also tailor-make our message for issues that face young people. Hence, you have a number of young people who would say they haven't voted or they don't see any value in voting because...
How does that make you feel, by the way, as a parliamentarian?
I feel like a failure as a leader because remember, as a young person, these are exactly the same people to which we should be targeting our message. But I think what is also important here is to make people understand that the reason why people have decided not to vote over the past few years is simply because them voting has not actually changed their material conditions at all. But if you are not satisfied or happy with the status quo, the only way you can change it is by casting a ballot, unfortunately. And that means one has to look harder into the different options that are available at their disposal and make a decision. At least there's one person who said, I voted against a particular political party because of what it stands for, but in favor of a particular program because the person wants change.
Let me come back to Divine because we're hearing a lot of theoretical talk from the legislator here. Do you think that he understands the things that you're going through, the things that you're saying no to?
No, in my opinion, it's a no because, I mean, if you're up there in Parliament and you're sitting with the people who are in right infrastructures, I mean, you won't be looking at people like us who are suffering in everyday basis on waking up in a small room, washing it in the same place. I mean, you're cooking in the same place. I mean, I don't think you feel what we are feeling because you are there in that place whereby you are with different type of people with a different type of opinions because they don't know what we're experiencing. You know, they are fighting for whatever they're fighting for, but they don't know the hard living that we are going through. Okay. They don't know.
All right, let me come back to you because Divine was saying that parliamentarians like these ones, they don't understand. They're just busy painting broad strokes, broad brush strokes, without truly understanding what it is you're going through. Are there channels where you can bridge this communication?
Which communication between youngsters?
Yeah, and legislators.
I think if they are, then they're very thin and they're very narrow. Because, for example, there was a march against gender-based violence and we had to march to Cape Town, to the parliament. So I feel like for me, having to do that, having to dehumanize yourself, and because it is a relative form of dehumanization, walking and crying out for help that please, as women, as queer bodies, as femmes in this country, as non-binary bodies in this country, can you please see us? Can you please see that we are being raped, we are being killed? Can you please acknowledge us? What does that mean?
So you think that these things that you're going through, the things that you're talking about, should be intuitive for the politicians?
It should be.
Okay.
It should be, without a doubt.
Precious, you wanted to say something?
So I think there's also a lack of civic, education in schools, right? So people don't know how bills are made. They don't know how to challenge and engage in the democratic process, right? Because democracy is not just about elections every 5 years. I think people can engage and are engaging in various ways in South Africa. But I think that there needs to be more civic education in schools and a sense of, young people being taken seriously and not just being tokenized when elections come and when it matters for political parties, but to be taken seriously.
Is that how you feel, by the way, that come the election cycle, that's when you suddenly become important?
Absolutely, yeah. Right? But also, the kind of demographic of young people is quite wide, right? So there's a multiplicity of priorities. It's not just unemployment, but it's service delivery. It's how they're thinking about land reform and many other issues. And I think to kind of lump it to one kind of issue is problematic and also limiting, right? We're not taking young people seriously for the reasons why we should be taking them seriously in terms of moving this country forward.
Okay. Asanda, I want to come to you because you're a political analyst and you're also in the media, so you have a broader sense of this. Are the problems which are affecting young South Africans similar to those that are affecting other young Africans south of the Sahara?
Young people in South Africa are some of the luckiest in terms of the continent. They're lucky in terms of the infrastructure that exists in this country and the kind of opportunities that exist in this country. But when you don't have access to that kind of information, then it becomes difficult to feel the privilege, or it becomes difficult to feel like you are in a position where you can make decisions. And I think if you look at particularly the high unemployment, there's something that unemployment does to you psychologically that actually sort of dilapidates you and in a lot of ways paralyzes you to a point where you're not able to really think outside of your personal circumstance and the right now, because it's very easy if you're living in a sort of suburb to think about how can I participate politically and what are the different ways that I can. But if you're living in a place like this, for example, where your main concern is, if it rains right now, is my house going to get flooded? And your secondary concern is, will I have food at the end of the day tonight? I mean, you've got people that are living in such abject poverty that they are doing things like eating in shifts. Some are going for days without eating. And so if you have a hungry stomach, it's really quite difficult to think outside of yourself.
Yeah, stunted horizons, as they're called. So I want to bring in the people who are listening from the back here, and I just want to ask a simple question. How many of you voted in the last election? Just raise your hands. Just one person. How many of you did not vote? Wow. Let me come to the lady, the only person in this group who actually voted. So you went to the polls. Do you feel like the things that you asked for, the things that the politicians promised you, are going to be delivered?
They already started to deliver.
They're already starting to deliver.
I voted, which is my vote is no secret. I voted for DA. DA is bringing many changes.
Can you just explain to our other African viewers who don't know what DA is? Is it like opposition?
Democratic Alliance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so it's part of the opposition.
Yep, it is. So I voted for DA because I want more change. More changes should be done. We can't always rely on EFF, DA, UDM, ANC, which is, there's been a lot of corruption that's been going on. I'm not saying DA is not doing any corruptions. Every party does corruptions. But then what expecting to be done now is more change, to bring more change to the people.
Bring more change to the people, Mr. MP. The lady here says that your party is not doing what you're saying it's doing.
Well, we are governing at the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, which is in the Eastern Cape. So there's no way that we can bring change here. The only thing we can do, obviously.
But what does that mean? When you say that you're geographically removed from the people, does it also mean that you're intellectually removed from them? How does it mean?
They're looking for material improvements in their living conditions, which we can't offer at the present moment in the short to medium term. But what we can do is to ensure that the Democratic Alliance, to which we're in opposition here, does exactly what it's supposed to do as the party: delivers services to the people, make sure that they reduce inequality, reduce poverty. But my responsibility insofar as making sure that those hardcore service delivery issues happen at the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. Here I'm the opposition, but I think the issue which is very critical and important here, where we're failing as parliamentarians, is that we're not taking whatever we get from our constituencies to Parliament. We decide, in many instances, in fact, we end up having academic debates instead of discussing.
So because you know what the problem is, you're saying that we're not taking what the people are saying and we're not actualizing it. So why are you an MP?
I'm an MP because we need to improve the oversight mechanism of government in its totality so that we don't work in piecemeal fashion. Remember, you have your local sphere of government, which has a completely different tools and mechanisms of oversight. You have your national parliament, you have provincial departments, for example. There's an overlap of duties and a duplication of work which needs to be addressed.
Okay, I understand there's someone behind here who had something to say. Who was it? Ah, right, Mr. Kenny, you've arrived. Thank you for joining us. Better late than never. So we've been talking about young people not voting, and majority of these people behind, save for one, did not vote. How does that make you feel, having been in the ANC during the liberation days?
I feel so much hurt by our youth distancing themselves from the voice. A voice, by voting, is a voice that give mandate to the leadership, whoever in power, to deliver what is needed by the people of this country. More especially our young people are the salt of this country, are the cream of the nation. Something needs to be done for them to have a harmony and a better future in their lifestyle. So we need, as a political organization, to start introducing democracy, voting system, even in schools, so that people, they know the only voice is no longer throwing stones and burning tires, is to have a mandate and to dwell on community issues that are affecting us in our daily lives. Let's be part and parcel of changing our environment. Let's not fold arms and stand on the touching line watching the game that we're supposed to be playing. Let's all be players.
Well, okay, so I don't know how many of you heard what Mr. Kenny was saying, but he said he's hurt. He's so hurt that you guys are not voting, that the likes of Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta fought so hard for you and you're not taking advantage of that. How do you feel about that?
I feel kind of, as the youth, we have the right to not speak out. We have the right to speak out. But then when there is no change is made, we have the right to not vote so that they can know that the youth is not happy. So that's what I'm thinking about, because we might vote and still no change will come.
So what's making you specifically so unhappy?
The unchanging things happening in this world, especially in Hout Bay. There's no changes. They've been promising to build houses for us, but then there's still no houses built. We still live in shacks. They're only building roads, but then we don't need roads at the moment. Mostly we need a shelter under our roofs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it.
And can I ask, how many of you people here know your local government representatives? Do you know them by name? Do you know how to reach them? Anyone? No? Oh, no. Tell me about that. Come on. So if you don't know your local leaders, how can you ask them to build you the houses, to do the things that you want to be done?
Like we know some of them. Like we can talk to Mr. Kano. You see, like he's the one who's gonna take things like further for us. Yeah.
No, what about you, sir? Do you know your local government representative?
Yes, it's Uncle Kenny. Yeah.
But is Kenny your local government representative or is he your community leader?
Community leader.
Okay. So for you, this is more important. This is better access than going to parliament. All right. So let me come back to Sihle. Where are you? You've disappeared for a while. So we're hearing from the young people here that it doesn't matter how hard you fight because you're so far removed. It's easier for them to talk to a community leader, and yet you're telling me you're the party of young people.
The fact of the matter is the EFF really has been the only organization that has been able to bring politics to grassroots levels, to everyone. The EFF is saying, look, the 1994 story is a nice story. It's a nice dream that, our fathers over there and Nelson Mandela told us. But for me to vote, but I can't pay for school fees, doesn't matter. For me to vote, but I'm unemployed, what does that mean for me? The EFF really is born out of these frustrations that these
it might be born out of these frustrations, but clearly there's still a disconnect because Divine here is saying, I don't care what you stand for, I'm still not going to vote.
Look, of course, it was never going to be an overnight project. But if you really look at the real constituency that the EFF has been able to tap into, if you look at institutions of higher learning, even TVET colleges, and even within small community programs, they've been able to tap into a particular constituency amongst young people. That is why more and more young people are starting to realize that the EFF is in fact an organization that speaks to our problems.
As usual, this politician right here sounds like he's campaigning on DW. But let me ask, how effective are narratives like this for the people behind you? Is it actually going to effect change?
South Africa is a country that was deliberately underdeveloped. So parts of it are very developed and parts of it are underdeveloped. And it's going to take a long time for that to be undone. Look at this place that we are now. If you look across the road, you'll see that people are living in really magnificent houses with amazing ocean views. And yet, the people that are not even 5 kilometers away from them are living in abject poverty. And there's a relationship between the people. There's a relationship wherein the people on the hill are happy to have the people live here in abject poverty because this is access to cheap labor, because they get to have free nannies, they get to have free domestic workers. And so unless and until you begin to work on undoing apartheid structural spatial planning, you are not going to get very far in terms of undoing South Africa unless and until you begin to engage in the issue of land. Because I don't think that any of these people sitting here are not capable of building their houses, but they just don't have the land in which to do it, because even the shack that their current shack is standing on, they don't necessarily have legal tenure. That's why it's very important that people like the EFF, people like the UDM, people like the ANC and all the political parties in South Africa are bringing in young people and bringing young people's voices into parliament. That's a major change. And I'm personally looking forward to the next 5 years, particularly for the presence of women and particularly for the presence of young people.
So let me ask you, when there was elections, were there campaigns here in this area? Were you seeing a lot of politicians? Yeah, you did? And have you seen them back since the election? No. Why do you think this is?
I just think it's a money-making scheme. That is one of the reasons why I didn't vote, because I mean, you only see politicians, they are very visible when there's an election taking place. But once that is done and they've taken the votes, then boom, they're gone. That is why most young people like us, we just don't go.
Yeah.
It's mostly like our grannies, our mothers, because they still have that, let's vote for Mandela. But Mandela isn't here. I mean, he's gone, long gone. We're living now and still.
Kenny, you're laughing, but I really want to know what your opinion is on that matter.
South Africa is still a country divided with two nations. Minority white rich and majority black poor communities. In the local government in the Western Cape, it's rare to have City of Cape Town to run even ID processes to consult the communities. They just employ consultants that's sitting around the corners and plan what those people want. They do things without us. So gone are those days that even an organization that I know work for disability people, they have a slogan that disability is not equal to inability. So nothing for us without us. So the land in Western Cape has been taken by some conservative whites. When the mayor of the DA, Patricia de Lille, tried to solve some pieces of land around Hout Bay, he got to be kicked out by her own political parties because they have that not in my backyard NIMBY. It's what they chase her away because he have identified pieces of land to accommodate us, to take us from the way that we're staying in a cage like a rat, that if the rats need space, it need to kill each other. That's what the situation they put us in. They put us on the small pieces of land so that we can fight against each other in order to occupy bigger spaces.
Okay.
They never done anything even on building the houses that you see. It was an Irish philanthropist that came and partnered with government to build these brick houses that you see. Nothing that come from local government and other spheres of the nation. We're dependent on foreign nationals that are putting their money to save the life of the people who are still treated as subhumans by some of the white conservatives in Habi. They don't take us as human.
Well, obviously the things that Mr. Kenny are talking about are really, we cannot underestimate the things that he's referring to. But I want to come back to you because a lot of the people here are saying something similar to what you are, that they feel underrepresented or misrepresented or unheard. So what will it take for you to get a party of your choice or politicians who are the ideal?
I wanted to, but you were still like going around. I wanted to hop on to what Tato Kenny was saying. Just that trail of thought that we have a privilege as young students. We have a privilege, as young people, to take a part in our democratic rights. That is to vote. But I feel like we, with no disrespect also, with Tato Kenny, he grew up in a different time, During his time, it was a privilege to vote. And now, as much as it's not a privilege, but what is the point of voting 25 years into democracy if nothing's going to happen for you?
So for you, not voting is a kind of vote.
Yeah, for me, my silence is my voice, to be honest. So until I feel like there's a party that will represent me and my needs and the needs of people like me, then I won't vote.
But what does this mean? That we should have a multiplicity of parties and political organizations that represent each and every single individual need?
I guess, but also there's a problem, like that can be relatively problematic because then what does it mean for political parties to have women wing sections of the party? Does it then mean that they cannot, that women needs are separate from the from the national problem, national politics? Why can it not be under the same umbrella?
Okay.
Basically.
All right. So I want to come back to Precious. You've been quiet for a while. Looking forward, what do you think needs to happen, not just in South Africa, but the entire continent of Africa, for young people to be more engaged in their civic duty? Because whether we like it or not, it's one of the best ways to voice our opinions.
I think I still stand with the whole civic education point. I think it's important that we know what it means, right, if we live in a democracy and how we can engage and how we can hold our leaders accountable. But I think also there needs to be, we need political parties and leaders need to stop tokenizing young people and take them seriously if we're wanting to think about, the future. And so, it's been exciting to see young people entering parliament, but it's going to be interesting to see, what kind of impact they have. So I think it's to take seriously, young people and their views and what they can offer in terms of, kind of solutions in terms of taking the country forward.
All right. Let me come back to Divine, who we started with. I want to close with you. What would it take for you to vote in the next election?
It would take... honestly, this country, it needs not just one party. In order for South Africa to be the South Africa that we want it to be, everyone should be involved. Everyone should participate in making this place a better place.
Thank you so much for your views, and that's a fantastic place to end this discussion. A multiplicity of voices is required, not just in government, but also for the people who are being represented. It's been a very insightful conversation happening right here in Cape Town, but really, it could have been in any corner of Africa because the issues brought up here today are really far spread across Africa. Thank you for watching.